Deb, I have pushed your stream live now, and now you can also make me a co-host.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Hey, hi everyone. Welcome.
Hello. Morning.
So glad to see you all. We have a big class. This one obviously struck a chord. Cooking for one or two. It's excited to see how many people were joining this class today.
Hello, Deb. It's Thuy.
Hi, Twee. Hi. See Carol Sue and Nelda, Leslie.
Hey there.
Hey, there's Leslie. Leslie is our guest today. How's everything in your neck of the woods? Is it a beautiful day?
Yes.
Yes, a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Sunny. Cloudy
Hopefully
here.
rain.
Yeah, a little cloudy here too, but still warm. I'm happy for that. Anybody cook anything fun today so far?
Nope.
No.
Anybody eating leftovers for lunch?
Yes.
I am too. I had some leftover kale salad, a recipe that I shared in a class, one of my classes. So that was very tasty.
I just finished making the caviar bean salad.
Oh, did you? That would be delicious. I like that recipe, Nelda. Thanks for sharing that one.
Thank you.
Okay, we're just going to give it a minute. We have 60 people signed up for the class, so we're going to just let it. Oh, yeah. And Leslie is going to be our co-host today. So when you find Leslie's picture, if you want to pin her to the front screen at some point so that you can focus on her and what she's talking about, that will work out just fine.
Deb, I just want to make sure, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yes, good.
Yeah.
Sound great. You sound
Thank
great,
you.
Leslie.
Thank you.
Good morning, Deb.
Good morning, Carolyn. How are you?
I'm fine. I just finished the walk around the block with the cat. It takes longer when the cat comes.
Oh my gosh. Well, you're lucky that you have a cat that'll go for a walk with you.
Oh, he's the neighborhood hometown buffet hostess.
He gets handouts wherever he goes.
Oh, and he knows how to work it too.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
He doesn't belong to me, but he just showed up about 6-7 years ago through the doggy door. So, and he used to walk around with the Jack Russell Terrier that I had.
Sweet. What a nice ritual.
Yeah.
Oh.
Jilly didn't know he was a cat because she was kind of blind and deaf. So.
So just quickly, a cat story I saw on the news today. I forget where it was. I think it was in Scranton, Pennsylvania. They somebody thought that there was a bobcat in their school. So they cleared everybody out and called the animal control people to come in, canceled classes and everything. And it was just a regular cat. It had a bobcat tail and had stripes on it, but it was just a regular cat. But they canceled school for it. So I thought that's a pretty good cat story.
Too funny.
This is the tabby, red tabby too, and he was like 20 pounds when he came to me. He slimmed down a bit, but he still gets his treats.
That's a big cat. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's about, well, it's 4 minutes past the time of the class time, so there may be a few more folks joining us. And I'll share my screen though and get us started in the meantime. Go through some of our beginning greeting kinds of information. Make sure everything's working properly. Do you all see my slide? Okay. And I'm guessing there are many new people here today that haven't been in any of my classes. I see a lot of familiar faces, and I want to welcome all of you back. I'm always excited that you come back to my classes time after time. And I'm also equally excited when I see that there are some new faces that are joining. And I hope that this will be the first of many classes that you take with me. I do all things cooking. And today, our focus is going to be on cooking, easy cooking for one or two. My name is Deb Livingston, and I am your guide here in York, Pennsylvania. I live on the East Coast, where it's a cloudy kind of day outside. I guess I'm okay with being inside and teaching. I really enjoy things like organic gardening. My garden is just starting to take off. I like to cook things out of that garden. I have a real love of eating things made from whole foods. So I apply that in a lot of the classes that I teach here. And my background is in business. So I've spent a lot of years doing training and development, but in a whole different area. And now I'm happy to be here at Get Set Up, talking about nutrition and food and cooking, and joining with you all to learn from you as well. In our classes, we really learn best when we can see and hear each other. That's what's unique about Get Set Up. And if you're joining us, it's really good if you can join by camera, and also to participate either by unmuting yourself or by using the chat. Now, today we're going to use the chat pretty liberally, because it may be a little difficult to manage conversation on the microphones, because we have so many people in this class. So please feel free. Both Todd, who is our TA up there in the corner, and I will be looking at chat. Since we do have a co-host today, I'm going to be doing this in the format of kind of an interviewing format. So I'm going to ask Leslie questions and walk through her presentation with her. And I'll be also taking your questions along the way and just pausing periodically and asking Leslie to answer some of those questions. So please go ahead and put those thoughts and questions in the chat. I'll be watching them, and Todd will be my backup on that. You can request a recording of this class. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of good information, and if you want to re-watch it, you can email help@getsetup.io, and they'll be happy to send you a copy of the recording. We are airing this by live stream, so I want to welcome all of you who are out there watching this on live stream. And I want to invite you to come to the next class by registering at Get Set Up and being on the screen here and being part of the conversation, so that we can learn from each other. We can learn from you. We always share information liberally from all kinds of sources, but we always like to remind you that there is no financial arrangement with any of those companies, either by me personally or by Get Set Up. So this is our agenda for the day. We're going to just take a minute or two to get to know Leslie Lamb, who is a member of the Get Set Up community. Probably several of you recognize her, and you've been in a lot of classes with her. So it's really our privilege to have her being a co-host today to share what she knows. And she's going to talk specifically about meal planning and her meal planning system for quick meals when she's just cooking for 1 or 2 people. And some of those ideas are going to be in the form of recipes and tools. And she's going to share with you those rotational recipes that she uses so that you can try them at home. And then any tips along the way. I've got some questions that I might ask Leslie to just stimulate that, but I'm hoping that you will also have those questions. So we will have just nice dialogue in this class today, and all input is welcome. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing this screen right now, and I'm going to ask you to pin Leslie. There's Leslie to your screen. And I just want to welcome you, Leslie, and ask you a little bit about yourself. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us where you live and how you got to be at Get Set Up.
So I live in the desert Southwest. I am formerly from California initially, and then from Iowa. So the desert Southwest was a complete change for me when we got here. I also made a major change in downsizing. We live in a very small apartment here. And so when I first started cooking, I cooked for a large family, and I had to learn to pare things down. I don't have as much storage space here in the apartment. I have an apartment-sized fridge and freezer, and I am actually taller than my fridge. And that's saying something because I'm 5'3". So I had to come up with a completely different system of cooking to just make meals for 1 or 2 and to rely more on shelf-stable ingredients versus fridge and freezer. I used to do a lot of once a month cooking, if anybody has heard of that, when that first came out. I was a single parent and I needed to make my meal time as streamlined as I could. So I got a cookbook, and it's actually called Once a Month Cooking. And just started making recipes from that. And that's a whole nother thing. I don't do that anymore. But it was quite an interesting adventure, I guess, because you had to be very, very organized to prepare that much food in a single day. And we did have a standalone freezer for that. So I do enjoy cooking, and I always tell people I would enjoy cooking more if we didn't want to eat 3 times a day. Because doing all that planning and prep and trying not to waste ingredients and things can sometimes be a bit of a chore, but I have come up with a system I really like, and I'm happy to share that with everyone here, and I hope that you all get something out of it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And how long have you been a member of Get Set Up?
I have only been a member of Get Set Up, I think, for about a month. And I love to learn. I love to share. I love the community. For a while there, my entire day was filled with Get Set Up classes, but I've since pared down the addiction a little bit, and I just attend a couple of classes a day, 2 or 3. So.
Okay, and now here you are as a co-host. You really made that transition, that leap very quickly. So.
Yes, and I really seriously had never attended anything on Zoom before Get Set Up. So I do ask everyone to bear with me today. I'm going to try to share some things with you. I'm going to try to even do a little show and tell. So we'll see how that works. But yeah, I did not use Zoom prior to Get Set Up.
So this is really an opportunity to practice those Zoom skills too. And for anybody who's interested, I think it's a testimony to what you can do as a member of this community too. So I welcome any of you out there who might want to co-host with a topic of your choice. Okay, so you started to mention the challenges that you had with cooking for 1 or for
Yes.
refrigerator that was small, shorter than you, and so on. And
Mhm.
I just wonder what were the other challenges that you were looking to overcome in cooking for one or two?
Well, like I said, I have an apartment-sized fridge and freezer, and I have a total of 18 inches of counter space. And I wish I was kidding about that, but I'm not. I have 18 inches of counter space in my kitchen. So I had to learn how to prep food in that small space. We do have a linen closet that I converted into a pantry. So I rely heavily on shelf-stable ingredients. I do buy in bulk, and so my recipes are all based on mostly bulk bought purchases. When I prepare my weekly grocery shopping list, it is only for fresh and frozen to supplement what I have for bulk. And like this week, I have 7 items on my grocery list. That's it. So as I go along, I'll kind of talk to you about how I do that. But yeah, it's mainly a case of space. I don't have much storage space either. So I have to store my, all my pots and pans. For instance, my pots and pans nest, they have handles that come off, and I use them as mixing bowls as well. So everything's pretty much dual purpose.
Wow.
It's also really nice to take in the camper when we go camping. So it's really just been an issue of space and learning how to live with not having a reliance on the big freezer and the big fridge and still being able to make what we want to make to eat.
So it sounds like you have made every purchase for your kitchen count. You had to
Yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about today. And I do have some notes. If you see me look down, I'll share with you. I just have some notes so I don't forget to say something. But yes, every inch counts and every moment matters. So
Okay. That's a great way to sum it up. And I think what I want to do before we launch into your presentation and all the great things you'll have to tell us is to just open the floor or open the chat box. I would like to understand, and Leslie probably would as well, what your challenges are in cooking for one or two. What are the things that are most challenging for you? I'm going to put that in the chat and we'll be taking a look at that as we go on here.
Someone is having a problem with sound. If Todd could check into that, it's S. Carter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it.
Yeah, he's working on that. He's checking the chat. Thank you very much. Just looking to see if anybody's entering anything in the chat there. There was one comment about I'm looking for less ingredients and ways to cook and easy things to cook. So that's a challenge and a priority. Microwaving for one or two people. AI recipes are for all recipes are for large amounts. So converting recipes. And I think that's something you're going to talk about a little bit, aren't you?
yes.
And Katie says, I don't like cooking only a single meal. I need to have ideas for making enough to use as leftovers.
Mhm.
And you are specifically going to talk
Yes.
about that because I kind of remember when we talked, you said, I hate leftovers.
I hate leftovers. I absolutely cannot stand leftovers. However, I do cook for plandovers is what I call them. And I'll talk a little bit about that because if I can make it look or taste like something different, I'm okay with that. But if it looks like what I had for dinner last night, I don't want any part of it.
Yeah.
So that's just a personal preference.
I really like that. Planovers. I never heard that term before. I think that's a neat idea and a neat way to expand the idea of leftovers. So Dana says, let me see if I can catch the chat. It's moving here pretty quickly. I don't mind leftovers, but I get tired of them after a couple of days.
Yeah.
Easy prep, not a lot of ingredients and flavorful.
Yeah.
Carolyn says, I tend to waste food by the time I get around to prepping.
Yes.
And yeah, all of this is really just so on point. And Ethel says, figuring out what to prepare for breakfast that is healthy and not the same thing every day. I only prepare meals for myself.
Mhm.
Eileen says the temptation to rely on fast food or meals prepared in grocery stores for one or two. Need the inspiration for easy to cook or prepare food in my own kitchen. And I realize I'm reading all of this, and I think you wanted to say something, reply to some of those, so feel free.
Yeah, so I actually think I have a lot of the chat covered in what I'm going to talk about. And the good thing with Get Set Up is there's always another class. So if we don't get to everything today, we'll see if we can address them in the future, because it is definitely a challenge to learn to cook for one or two if you have cooked for more than one or two in the past. So I'm just happy to share with everybody what I have learned over the last few years. So.
And Leslie, I'm really glad you said that, because that was the method behind my madness in asking about the challenges, feeling that we could get a list here and it would tell us what we need to address in future classes. So this is not a once and done, folks. And Leslie has already agreed to come back later in the month to talk about some make ahead mixes that make your mealtime prep much easier. So with that, I'm going to let you take it away, Leslie.
Thank you. And again, this is my first time presenting, so I appreciate everyone putting your questions in the chat, your comments in the chat. If there's something you really enjoy, something that you want to actually see the recipe for, then please put that in the chat. We'll make sure we get that to you. So you should receive an email after class that has your class notes, and there should be some PDFs attached. So there will be a PDF that is strictly for measurement conversions, because that was one of the most difficult things that I had to learn how to do, and we'll cover that today. There will be a couple of recipes that I use on a regular basis. And there's also going to be a meal planner and grocery list handout that I use. I actually have it printed and laminated at UPS, and then I just use it every week to plan out my menus. I'm not like a hard and fast menu planner, nor am I a hard and fast prepper. I don't do like meal prep. Like I said, I used to do once a month cooking, and that was a complete 8 hours of cooking. I don't do that any longer. So, so the key, the two main keys that I have found with cooking for one or two particularly quick meals, I told Deb, I kind of think of myself as a lazy cook, but really I'm just an efficient cook, is the number one thing is planning and organization. And some of you are going to cringe when you hear that. The number two thing is prepping. And again, I do it differently than I have done in the past. And again, I'm trying to maximize my budget and my space in that apartment size fridge and freezer, and with that 18 inches of kitchen counter space. So I do mostly shelf stable ingredients, like I mentioned. And we did convert a linen closet to a pantry. And I did buy a kitchen cart, which is a rolling pantry. So that's where the majority of my ingredients are kept. And I do cook from a pared down pantry. So my recipes rely on a lot of the same ingredients. So like, for instance, we use a lot of oatmeal. We use a lot of oat milk. And so those are things I buy in bulk. I do a bulk shopping trip once a month. And if you have not tried it, grocery pickup, ordering online grocery pickup is a life changer. Somebody else does my shopping for me and I go and pick it up. That is kind of how I organize my supplies, and then I just supplement with whatever's on sale that week. So when I talk about rotational recipes, they have to be something that is very versatile, something that I can use a lot of different ingredients in. And when you receive your handouts, you'll see two different types of recipes I use. So one of them is called sticky chicken. It isn't sticky, but it's just the name of the recipe. I found it years ago, and it's basically a dry rub on chicken. I put it in the crock pot. I rely a lot on appliances. I let them do the work while I don't. So crock pot, Instant Pot Mini I have an Instant Pot Mini. I use it almost every single day. And again, that was something that is a learning curve. You can find a lot of recipes out there for an Instant Pot, but for an Instant Pot Mini, not so much. And so an Instant Pot Mini, for those of you that don't know, it's just 3 quarts rather than 6. And it is a pressure cooker, and you can do a lot of things with it. So we have our schedule we never know where we're going to be and when we're going to be there. So I used to do a lot of crock pot cooking, but now it doesn't work as well for me. So I can do something in the Instant Pot in a matter of minutes that would take hours in a crock pot. That being said, there are recipes I do prefer to make in a crock pot. Like, for instance, we make an onion soup, which is absolutely amazing, but it does take 12 hours in the crock pot. And if anyone wants that recipe, I'd be glad to share it later. But basically, you're caramelizing onions and butter in the crock pot overnight. It stinks up our house, so we have to put it outside. But and then you add your broth and you let it cook for the rest the next day, and it makes an amazing onion soup. It's also healthy. I do get most of my recipes off of Weight Watcher type sites. And I do try to use vegan as much as I can, as well as sugar-free. So as far as, another thing, I try to minimize food waste. So one of the big things about minimizing food waste is you can't use what you don't know you have. And for me, one of the saddest days in my kitchen used to be the day I threw away all the food that had expired because I had bought too much in the pantry, or it had wilted or gotten icky in the fridge. It wasn't leftovers, because I don't like leftovers, but it was, the mushrooms that had gotten pushed to the back of the fridge when you forgot they were there, and they're on the bottom shelf, and the grandkids nowhere near to get them out. So, we're just, again, lazy cook, efficient cook type of thing. So I use boxes and baskets to organize my fridge, my freezer, and my pantry. And I'm going to try to show you some of them. I have them on a little shelf here next to me, but I don't know. I've never done this, so we'll see how this goes.
Leslie, while you're doing that, or before you do that, do you mind if we just stop for a second and get a few questions before they go to
sure.
the topic?
Sure.
So we did have a question about the Instant Pot Mini.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else? You said it's a 3 quart instead of a 6 quart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the essential difference. And the other thing was that there were no real cookbooks for that, or recipes specific.
Well, you can find some cookbooks out there, but what I preferred to do was just to use the 6 quart recipes that I used to use, because I had a 6 quart Instant Pot, and then just pare them down to the 3 quart. And that was just a learning curve, because sometimes I would put in too much. Sometimes it took longer to cook than I thought. And I will tell you, it's no fun when you get a burn warning on your Instant Pot because you are trying to restart it after, to add some more cooking time. So it doesn't blow up. I had an Instant Pot for a full year in a box in my closet that I bought on sale during a Black Friday sale. And I literally never opened the box or used it because I was terrified it was going to blow up.
Yes.
So my son came to visit, and he's like, "Mom, get the Instant Pot out. We are going to cook with it." And so we did. We did Thanksgiving dinner with the Instant Pot. It was also the first time I used my air fryer. So we did a turkey in the air fryer. And we all lived to tell about it, and nothing burned down. So it was all good.
Good. Okay, so that speaks to, and maybe it reassures people that the Instant Pots are safe, because
Yes.
we these fears of the older pressure cookers where we heard stories of those blowing up. And I do have a question from Ray, who says, can we cook these recipes that you're giving us on a stove or in an oven if we don't have a crock pot or an Instant Pot?
You can. The recipes that I've given you, number one, I believe Deb's going to include links to the original recipes. They are not my recipes. I have modified them for a 2-person household. So the recipes you receive from me will be my recipes that I have converted from the original recipe links. And so I might have changed an ingredient. Like for instance, if it calls for almond milk, I use oat milk instead. So you would want to refer back to the original recipe. And most of them do include how to cook in the crock pot or stove or oven or on this, pretty much any way you can cook it. But the recipes that I provide are actually the recipes I use. And they're recipes I have scrapbooked because I'm in the process of preparing a Christmas gift cookbook for my family. So
Okay.
they are my recipes as I prepare them, but the links will be recipes. They'll be more inclusive of other alternative cooking methods.
So they'll get all the options.
Yes.
They'll do anything. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. So you were about to show the container organizers that you have.
Sure. So I got all of these at Walmart. I'm sure you can get them elsewhere, but I use these baskets. I'm going to stick it in front of my face because I don't know for sure what you can see and I can see, but they're plastic and they have a handle.
Mhm.
Does everybody see that?
We can see that well.
So they're really easy to pull in and out of the fridge, the freezer, and the pantry. And then I also have just these other little baskets. Again, I got them at Walmart and I will use those sometimes, but I prefer the ones with the handle because I can pull them out. I use a lot of mason jars. So like here's a little tiny mason jar. I don't know what size it is, but it's real small. And I can put 16 of these little mason jars inside this basket with a handle. So I'll tell you why that's important later. Another thing I do, excuse me while I set this down. Is I use lidded shoe boxes. They're Sterilite containers. Again, I think I got these at Dollar General, but I literally use these in my fridge. They will stack on top of one another. And so I keep my breads and tortillas and squishy things inside here and they stack. Another thing I do is I get silicone. I use a lot of silicone bakeware in that. So I try to measure before I purchase containers. I did not do that in this case, but as it turns out, 3 of those little silicone containers will fit inside of here. So I can even cook and leave the baked goods or the meatloaf or whatever in there and not take it out of the silicone, although I always do. But I bought my silicone containers based on what would fit in the Instant Pot and in the air fryer. So I did definitely measure that. And I bought these on Amazon. So, and then I also have a lot of what's called lock and lock containers, again, off of Amazon, where the lid locks on and off. Works really well in the camper. I make little seasoning mixes up and I put them in little containers because I hate, the thing that takes me the most time cooking is chopping and measuring. So I do everything I can to chop and measure all at one time. So I will make up my little seasoning mixes and put them in here and make 9 seasoning mixes at a time. And the reason for that, I told Deb, it was kind of like the old story with grandma and the ham. Why do you cut the ends off the ham, grandma? Because everybody thinks it makes it taste better. No, it fits in the pan. So that's why we cut off the ham ends. So in terms of these, I make up 9 of them because 1 of them is for me to cook with that day. And then 8 of them fit in the lock and lock container. So this is the sheet pan seasoning that I'll talk about with the sheet pan supper recipe. So that's kind of how I do it. And then in terms of making mixes, I make a lot of baking mixes. We love corn muffins. And again, we do healthy Weight Watcher recipes. So I just measure them out and put them in a baggie. And then I put a little label on the front that tells what I need to add to it. So like this one, it tells the name of the recipe, so I can go find it online if I need. And it also, I have a printed copy in a binder for my recipe binder. And then it just says add a 1/2 cup plus 2 tablespoons of low-fat buttermilk, plus 1/2 of a large egg, which we're going to talk about in a minute, plus a 1/2 cup of unsweetened applesauce. Once I mix those with this, I have corn muffins ready to go.
Incidentally, while you're just taking a quick breath there, I'll just mention you're coming back on the 17th to talk about those mixes in more detail or to provide more.
Yes.
Okay. So remember
So,
that 6, 7, 16.
Oh, sorry. The mix is just going to, this is like a Hillshire Farm turkey container that's been repurposed. So I just make as many as will fit in there, which is 6. So that's how I do that. So yeah, boxes and baskets organize everything. So I have a basket in the fridge, which is for meats and cheeses. So lunch meats and cheeses are in there. I have one in the fridge, which is for Jell-O and pudding. And I use those little mason jars and I make up a thing of Jell-O and I make up a thing of pudding, a sugar-free pudding, sugar-free Jell-O, throw it into the mason jars. And then it's there for my husband and I, or for the grandkids if they come over to visit. For some reason, grandkids think little tiny mason jars are awesome. And so I also have got some plastic ones that I got from Michael's if I'm specifically making some for the littler grandkids because they're likely to drop them on the floor. And then they learn how to clean up a mess.
Let's take a moment here. I just want to stop periodically and ask the audience if they have any questions for you up to this point. Just give them a chance to weigh in. You can put it in the chat. That would be great. Questions? I think that idea for the boxes and pulling the things out of the refrigerator is great, especially when so many containers are round. And it's hard, things fall out of the refrigerator when you get it too crowded. It looks like a really great way.
Yes. And those handled baskets I have used in the freezer and I have never had one crack or anything.
Good to know.
And I've used them for years. So
Yeah.
that I was concerned about that. I was afraid they might crack in the freezer. They're not designed for freezer use, I'm sure.
All right, no questions, so we can keep going. You're doing a great
Okay.
job with
Okay.
everything.
The other key is prep. So we talked about planning and organization because again, we're trying to make sure that this is quick so that we can do things quickly. And in my case, maximize space and also minimize waste. Those are my key things. So prepping, you want to invest in good quality or multiple sets of tools. So I have 2 sets of measuring cups and spoons. For the longest time, I just had 1 set that I got from the Dollar Tree. And then I doing much more baking during the pandemic, home baked goods. And I was doing a lot of 1/8 of a teaspoon conversions. And I decided I just wanted to buy a set of measuring cups that had 1/8 of a teaspoon because I would just measure it in 1/4 of a teaspoon and cut half of it out and, and it was just not efficient. It was not efficient, but, it was workable. So I already mentioned appliances. My number 1 kitchen assistant is my Instant Pot Mini. It cooks while I don't. And then the number 2 is probably the crock pot. I do use the microwave a lot. One of my favorite things for the microwave, we have a silicone microwave popcorn popper and it folds flat. And we don't put any oil or anything in with the popcorn and you can make as much or as little as you want. And it just has little measuring guidelines on it. And you just put in the number of kernels, just put it up to a certain level if you are wanting a small amount or put it up to another level if you want a full amount. So we love that little popcorn popper. So we're a popcorn family. And then a food processor, which I don't currently have right now. A food chopper, just one of the ones where you just tap on the top and it rotates around and chops things up. That's a big thing. An egg slicer. I use an egg slicer to slice strawberries, to slice eggs, of course, to slice mushrooms, to slice different things. So egg slicer. Silicone bakeware is huge for me. because I don't have to spray it and everything pops out. I used to rely with, either the cooking sprays, which there's no problem with them, or paper liners. And I'm going to share just really quickly. I found we're trying to do more and more vegan recipes, my husband and I. And I recently found a vegan baked oatmeal recipe. And so when you are learning to do this, it's trial and error. It really is. And so it usually takes me about 3 times of running through a recipe to be able to get it to where it works for me. So the vegan baked oatmeal, the first time, and Deb can probably tell you I shouldn't have done this, but the first time I tried putting it in paper liners, total fail. But because it was too moist of a recipe. So we peeled it off the paper liners and we put it in the container and we put it in the fridge and we just scooped out from there. The next time I tried putting it in a muffin tin with no liners, it was still a fail. It's just too moist. It doesn't come out well. I do not have an 8-inch pan. That's what the recipe calls for. I don't have an 8-inch pan. It will not fit in my Instant Pot, or it will not fit in my air fryer. So I don't own one. So then I thought, well, what about putting it in the little miniature bread pans, the silicone bread pans? And I did that and it worked very well. So that is how I will cook it in the future. Someone mentioned in the comments that they don't eat the same foods as their husband does. So I actually make 2 batches of the baked oatmeal now every week, because my husband does not like the same stir-ins as I do. He doesn't like the same fruit. So it's basically oatmeal with oat milk, with applesauce, a couple kinds of fruit. It calls for nuts. I don't put those in. And some cinnamon. So he has his own baked oatmeal, which has what he likes in it. And I have my baked oatmeal, which has what I like in it, or whatever happens to be on sale. So like, for instance, this week, peaches are on sale. So I'll use some peaches in my baked oatmeal. He will not eat those. He does not like peaches. So he's going to have blueberry, strawberry oatmeal instead. So that's kind of how we address some of those things, because again, I'm looking for recipes that are very versatile. And just to share kind of a funny story, my mother was very much she was the queen of substitutions, I call it, because she would make a recipe and we'd say, hey mom, what's for dinner? And she's like, oh, tuna noodle casserole, but I didn't have any tuna, so I substituted ham. And I didn't have any noodles, so I substituted rice. And we're like, well, mom, then it's not tuna noodle casserole, it's ham rice casserole. But so she was like, as long as you have the same consistency and, you're staying in the same food group, just try it. And so that's kind of how I grew up. Just try it. So I'm going to look at my notes real quick here. So I talked about the appliances. So, and first and foremost, anything I share today, take it, leave it, do what works for you. Try it, abandon it, try something different. I'm just sharing what's worked for me. So I also, like I talked about for silicone, I love it because I'm also trying for less cleanup. So silicone bakeware is amazing for cleanup. I also use silicone mats. I use them to roll out things. I use them to bake on. I forget what they're called. I think they're called Silpat mats. But I use those. I will line pans with foil or parchment. I will cook in foil or parchment. And when I'm mixing things up, I try to mix them in the pan I'm going to cook them in if I can. So just to cut down on the cleanup, we do not have a dishwasher here. I am the dishwasher. So I want to cut down on that. So I want to make sure. Oh, go ahead.
Just wanted to say that we've got, it's like 1:15, it's about 3/4 past the hour. So I want to make sure that you are where you want to be with your timing.
Okay. I may have more stuff that we're going to be able to talk about today. So Deb and I talked about that. So just really quickly, I'll tell you about the rotational recipes. So initially,
and I think people were specifically interested in the recipes. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
But,
Oh,
yeah.
that's okay. So my rotational recipes, they're very versatile. And so my initial goal was just to have 2 recipes for breakfast, 2 for lunch, and 5 for dinner. I do think in terms of themes. So we have Meatless Monday, Taco Tuesday, we have Wild Card Wednesday, which is anything goes, or maybe leftovers. We have Throwback Thursday, which is where I try to incorporate a heritage recipe from my family. We have Fishy Fridays, and we have Sheet Pan Saturdays. So it just makes it easy for my brain to think, okay, you know, one time this week, we're going to have a sheet pan supper. I may not have it on Saturday, but it's just the way my brain thinks. So in terms of planned overs, I make a recipe. It's called Budget Friendly Summer Vegetable Frittata. It is from the Diabetes Food Hub. And again, I can get the links to Deb on this. I make a vegetarian lo mein. So, and that's from Weight Watchers. So those are 2 Meatless Monday recipes. So those are the 2 Meatless Monday recipes I started with. The 2 Fishy Friday recipes I started with were a garlic Parmesan fish in foil and an Asian glazed fish in foil. And those were both designed for salmon, but I don't use salmon. We don't eat salmon. So I just use a white fish for those. And those are very easy to prepare and clean up. And I just throw my veggies right in with the fish. The recipe doesn't call for that, but whatever's on sale, like this week, we're going to have yellow squash and zucchini squash in there because they're on sale. And so that's going to go in with the fish this week. And then that vegan baked oatmeal, I also make a vegan flatbread, and I make that about twice a month. And we use it to serve with soups or salads, sometimes also with dips. I make a 2-ingredient dough, which is just with self-rising flour and yogurt, and you can make it savory or sweet. I rely on that recipe a lot. Then, like we talked about, the sticky chicken recipe, which is just a dry rubbed chicken rotisserie type recipe, which is going to yield me at least 3 meals. That's another thing that goes in quite often. The sheet pan sausage and vegetables, you guys will get a copy of that recipe. It calls for sausage. We do use it mostly with turkey sausage. We do it mostly with broccoli because we like broccoli. But again, this week, it's probably going to include some zucchini or yellow squash and some green beans because they're on sale. So, and then I do a couple of healthy, that's just 1 second, Deb, a couple healthy homemade baked goods. So those corn muffins, like I showed you, or a sugar-free brownie, which I make up a mix for too. So that's kind of how the meal planning works.
Could you walk us through the sheet pan recipe?
Yeah, can you show it on screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I don't know, I can't see the recipe on screen.
No, I'm not sharing it quite yet, so.
Not yet, okay.
There we go. Do you see it?
Now I do.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a recipe that I do at least twice a month. And it comes from pounddropper.com. You'll see at the bottom, you'll see that that's where it comes from. And Deb, I believe, is going to give you the link. So what I do to make this easier and faster for me is, number one, I'm going to take all of the seasoning mixes at the bottom, or all of the seasonings, starting with the 1/4 teaspoon of minced garlic all the way down to the 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. And I'm going to put them in that little container as a sheet pan for seasoning mix. So I'm going to actually make 9 of those when I make one of these. So I will then have the seasoning mix already measured out for another 8 meals. And then the way I actually do it is I will then dump one of those little containers of seasoning into a Rubbermaid container that I have. And I will add a tablespoon of olive oil and a tablespoon of water. The original recipe does not call for the water, but I found out that I preferred adding the water because it doesn't really cover my other ingredients as well as I would like. So again, just make modifications to see how things work for you. I'm going to include this week, I'm going to include 6 ounces of turkey sausage because I happen to have some in the freezer. I just buy the, Hillshire Farm turkey sausage, cut it in half, and half goes 1 week, half goes the next week, or later in the month or whatever. We do use the mini red, yellow, and orange peppers as opposed to the big ones, but the recipe I believe called for the large ones. Also, I think it actually gave you an option to do one or the other. We do broccoli often because we like broccoli, and I buy it in a large bag at Sam's. So we'll put broccoli in there, and or green beans or whatever else I want to put in there. So I'm just basically going to put all of those chopped ingredients into that Rubbermaid container with the oil, the water, and that seasoning mix. And then I literally just shake it up because I'm a lazy cook. So just shake the container, make sure you have something that's going to have a tight fitting lid. I shake it up, I turn it upside down, I stick it in the fridge to sit until I get ready to cook it. And then when I'm ready to cook it, I just preheat the oven. I put it on a foil lined baking sheet that I've sprayed with some cooking spray, cook it for 10 minutes, stir it around, take it out, stir it around, cook it for another 10, 15 minutes, and you're done. So what I cook along with the sheet pan supper is I do Instant Pot brown rice. And that's cooking while the rest of it is cooking because it doesn't take that long. I actually usually start the Instant Pot rice ahead of time before the sheet pan supper because it does take a little bit longer to cook. And then the thing about Instant Pot cooking, if you're not familiar with it, you do need to let it come up to, you need to let the pressure decrease. So you'll do a natural release or whatever your recipe calls for. So you do need to, even though it doesn't take that long to cook, you have to allow time for that pressure release to occur.
Leslie, I have a question here that somebody is asking about the garlic in that recipe. Will the minced garlic stay fresh, or are you using already dried minced garlic?
I actually use freeze-dried minced garlic. So I use the Lighthouse brand of freeze-dried minced garlic.
Okay.
So I'm glad someone asked that. Thank you for reminding me of that. Because no, if I put the minced garlic in and it was not freeze-dried, it would not keep.
Could this
So I
also,
do use Lighthouse.
thank you. Can this recipe be cooked as a stir fry?
It could be, I would assume. I haven't tried it that way, so.
I would agree. I think that could be easily adapted to a stir fry. Yeah, with a little bit of liquid. You might need a little bit of liquid in there.
Yeah, yes, I agree. And I don't cook a lot with a stir fry. Have a family story with that. I actually caught the kitchen curtains on fire once when I stir fry. Try not to do that. So,
Did you change any of the instructions?
From the original recipe, I did. Yes. Because again, what you're seeing here is it's the way I actually cook it. So the recipe has been cut in half from the original recipe, and Deb's going to give you the link to the original recipe. So I did change a little bit of the instructions. They're not as descriptive as they are in the original recipe.
So what we're seeing on screen is how you do it.
It's exactly how I do it.
Okay, perfect. I'll take a picture.
Oh, you should get a PDF of it.
Do you see how this looks? You're going to get this exact thing and you'll be able to print it out.
Or you can view it on your phone or tablet too.
Yeah, you'll get this. Did you want to say a word or two about your cooking conversion table before we wrap up?
Sure.
So I'll just bring that up so that you can talk about it.
So the cooking conversion table is something I made up specifically for this class because measurement conversions really threw me for a loop when I first started cutting recipes. So you will get this PDF as well. But I actually used to homeschool. And so we did a lot of cooking through that, and cooking was all about math. I've also taught cooking classes for kids, and cooking is all about math. So for instance, it just starts out saying, you know, a third of a cup, because if you can figure out how many tablespoons are in a cup, how many teaspoons are in a tablespoon, you can cut anything. So a third of a cup is 5 tablespoons plus 1 teaspoon. So if we're going to cut a third of a cup into fourths, because we have a recipe that feeds 4, and we only want 1 serving of it, for instance, or you have a recipe that feeds 8 and you don't, you know, you kind of follow along with the way I'm doing this, hopefully. But if we cut a third of a cup into fourths, it's 1.25 tablespoons. But most people don't have a 0.25 tablespoon measure, and you're going to need to cut it down anyway. So there are 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon. So 1.25 tablespoons equals 3 teaspoons plus a quarter of a tablespoon, which is 3/4 of a teaspoon. So a third of a cup cut into fourths is going to equal 3 tablespoons plus 3/4 of a teaspoon. So then I just put easy peasy, right? No. So let's just use a cheat sheet. So then you're going to have cheat sheets that are going to show you, because depending on how your brain works, it might help you better to understand, you know, in 1 cup, there are 16 tablespoons. In 2/3 of a cup, there's 10 tablespoons plus 2 teaspoons. And so then we also have a teaspoons or a tablespoons to a teaspoon conversion table, the next one down, which just explains that, you know, a quarter of a tablespoon is 3/4 of a teaspoon. So that's all important to know. And then further down, the way I usually do this is I either cut a recipe in a half, a third, or a quarter. So I just keep these measurement conversion tables in my recipe binder. And so it just tells if your recipe calls for a cup and you're cutting it in half, you're going to want a half a cup. Easy peasy for that. But if a recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup and you're cutting it in a half, then you're going to want a quarter of a cup plus 2 tablespoons. I hope that makes sense.
Wow, that's quite a tool. What do you think about this conversion tool, everyone? Did this just make your day to be able to have this? You are so empowered now to take any recipe and cut it to whatever it is that you could possibly want. And this is really, this took a lot of work for you to put together for us.
It did.
And
It
I
did.
I love it. Thank
Yes.
you. This is maybe the most important because
It
people
is.
wouldn't do this. We'd quit.
Yeah.
There
Yes, I do understand that. I got there myself. I was going to pull my hair out. So yes. And then another thing which is not included here, and I can try to put a link in the chat, is how to cut an egg in half. Because and I'm not sure if I can do this or not. Let me go back here and try to figure out how to get this into the chat.
And to those of you who are asking, absolutely, this is going to be sent in your email. So remember, if you can't find your email, I see that some of you have had that trouble. You must check your spam folder first of all to see if it's gone in there. And if it has not gone into your spam folder, please write to help@getsetup.io. Let them know you didn't get that email. We want you to have these conversion tables and all of these great recipes.
So yes, I hoped to share recipes with you today, but also to share the methodology behind what I do, because you're going to have your own family favorite recipes and you're going to, maybe want to cut them down. And when I talked about Throwback Thursday, I'm making a heritage recipe that comes from one of my family members. I'm big into genealogy. So I need to cut things down for my husband and I, because hate those leftovers. So we don't want to have that. I did put a link to how to have an egg for baking. That was also a big thing for me, is because a lot of times I would cut down and it calls for half of an egg. Well, how am I going to do that? So that, another thing is, if you're ever trying to figure out how to do something, just Google how to do it. And then just look at a few of them, and a lot of them will be very similar to one another. I do that with recipes too. I'll Google how to, like for the other day, for instance, I was going to make mushroom broth for the first time. And so and in the Instant Pot Mini. So I just Googled how to mushroom, I think I put mushroom stock, Instant Pot Mini. And I just looked at the things that came up on Google, and I just made up my own recipe based on what I saw. And I kind of went back to our amazing onion soup and said, okay, I know I want to include sherry in it because we have sherry in the onion soup and we like it and I have it on hand. Not all the recipes called for sherry. As it turns out, we weren't we weren't thrilled with the mushroom stock recipe. So it'll have to have another go around. Like I said, it usually takes me about 3 times around to figure out, to find a recipe we like that we will keep repeating.
Leslie, we're going to have to wrap it up at this point, but it sounds like we have lots left for at least one more session, maybe more. So we'll talk about that. The links that she just discussed is going to be included in the email. Leslie, if you hang on to after the class, we're going to wrap up here. But if you hang on, then you and I can talk a little bit about what else to include there. And
could you number the classes so we know which ones we've had and which ones are going to have new stuff?
They'll be called something different.
Okay, good.
Okay, so let me just go back here for a moment to share the screen. Yes, the next one is going to be called Make Ahead Mixes, Easy Recipes for 1 or 2, something like that. I'm going off the top of my head. So I'm going to check the chat, make sure that I understand what your challenges are with this and how many other classes we might do around cooking for 1 or 2. But I would also love to get that from you on an email at debtheguide@getsetup.io. If you have suggestions, other things that you would like to learn about this, specifically focus on. And
can you pull the chat up one more time? Because I was going to copy it, but now it's left.
okay, give me one.
Oh, there it is. There it is. I see it. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to send you the email with all the links. We have some additional ones and all the recipes will be attached. The ones that are Leslie's are PDFs. They'll be attached to your email. The other things will be links within the email. I'll give you some other ideas for other classes. Somebody said they went searching for the class that I just talked about. It's not up quite yet. That schedule will be up in the next few days. So I'm just giving you a heads up that it's coming. Give us some feedback about this session so we know what to do more or less of, and invite your friends to the next one. Leslie's going to be doing several things for us in the future, including showing us a little more about what she's going to do with those recipe cards that she's sending out. So I think she's very inspiring around things you can do with your recipes, and especially if you want to do a keepsake recipe book for your grandchildren.
Yeah.
So it's all pretty exciting. And I just want to thank you, Leslie, again for all the work you put into
Yes,
this.
thank you, Leslie.
you.
Awesome
Thank you.
class.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I really appreciate it. I appreciate being given the opportunity to do this. And I appreciate all of you being here and letting me know what you'd like to learn more about. Thank
Love
you.
it.
Love having
Do
you.
it a little earlier, not at 12:30 to 1:30 when most people eat lunch.
Well, we do change things around, but we are all over the coast, all over the country. So it's different times.
Oh, okay.
We try to change that up a little bit. So, anyway, if you want to host an interest group or suggest a new class or anything like that, connect us with your organization, right, to help it get set up. If you'd like to co-host like Leslie, you can always email me as well. So I think several of you are doing that, and I welcome always. Thank you again very much for coming today. Thank you, Leslie, very, very much. And
Thank you, everyone.
hope you have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you in the next class.
Thank you. Good class. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay. Just stopping the